There's a new spin on casual dining near Drake University. Lucky Horse Beer and Burgers. Craveable faves, flatbreads, delicious burgers, frozen cocktails, and a crazy cool vibe. Get to Lucky Horse Beer and Burgers today.
The morning news on YourIowa.com is brought to you by the Commission on U.S. Territories, striving for equal representation around the globe, and by Keep Iowa First, committed to keeping the Iowa caucuses the first in the nation contest in selecting the presidency of the United States. And now, here's your host, Brent Roske.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. It is the 27th of January, 2021. Up on the screen right now, boy, folks, we got the director of a documentary I love. It's called The Water of Life. It is brand new. You're going to be able to, we're going to tell you how you can watch it this week. But The Water of Life there, we're going to talk to the director, Greg Swartz. Just a great movie. I'm so excited to talk to him about it. After Greg today, Lisa Marks has just been such a key asset to this program, talking about streaming picks every week. This week, she's actually going to talk about certainly that, but also she spent time with Larry King. If you look up here on the screen, she wrote a piece for The Guardian. Larry King likes bagels so much he bought his own company. My office used to be right down the street from one of those locations. The Brooklyn Bagel Company would often pass Mr. King as I was walking to lunch or what have you. And he always just had a nice smile and a nice hello when I saw him. So very sad to hear his passing this week. Going to hear Lisa Marks' firsthand account of spending the afternoon with Mr. King a little later in the program. Some quick news. You see Joe Biden up there on the screen. They've talked about administering 100 coronavirus vaccines in 100 days, 100 shots in 100 days. And yesterday it was announced that the Biden administration had ordered 200 million more doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. And what they're saying is it will be enough to fully vaccinate 300 million Americans to beat the pandemic, and they're actually looking to do that toward the end of the summer into the fall. And obviously, you start getting up into those types of numbers, then that refers to what they call herd immunity. If enough people have the vaccine by then, that it will actually help the rest of the people who don't have it fight the disease. Let's take a quick look. President Biden had a press conference yesterday talking about that. Here's just about a minute of that press conference.
Tomorrow, we're going to begin the briefings that occur on a regular basis with Mr. Zients and his team. So we're bringing back the pros to talk about COVID in an unvarnished way. Any questions you have, that's how we'll handle them, because we're letting science speak again. And so I'd like to update you on the aggressive steps we're taking to meet our goal of administering 100 million COVID-19 vaccine shots within 100 days, and to ramp up the vaccine supply as fast as we can. This will be one of the most difficult operational challenges we've ever undertaken as a nation. I've said that before, but I must say it again, because we're going to do everything we can to get it done.
So that was President Biden just yesterday, again, looking to do 100 shots of the coronavirus vaccine in the first 100 days of his administration. But first, folks, let's bring up my buddy Greg Swartz joining us to talk about his brand new film, The Water of Life. And there he is. Hey, Greg, how are you doing, buddy?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
You know, Greg, I see on the internet you're all over the country. I see you taking time-lapse videos on the East Coast and then back in California. So where are you speaking to us from?
I am in Lake George, New York.
Yeah. So what brings you back to Lake George, New York? Is that where your family's from, or what's the connection?
It's where my wife's family's from. And since we were all working remotely, including my kids, we thought, well, let's come back for the holidays and stay and have a winter and get out of LA for a bit. So we've been here for 2 months.
So you've got some snow up there. We had 13 inches of snow in the last 30 hours here in Iowa. So so often the guests I bring on that work in entertainment are around palm trees and beaches. So I feel a kindred spirit with you, Greg. I always have.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this movie. I watched it yesterday. I love it. Folks, if you don't know this, I actually lived in Scotland. I was an actor. I was a musician. I was also a bartender in Scotland. So this movie, The Water of Life, a whiskey film all about Scottish whiskey, sometimes referred to as Scotch. Greg, why don't you tell us about, these beautiful images. I just love it. Why don't you tell us about the inspiration to make the film and what's it about?
Well, a few years ago, I was an exchange student in Scotland in college, and I'd been to Scotland more than a dozen times, but my wife had never been, and it was our 10th anniversary a few years ago, so we decided to go. And while we were in Scotland, we did a thing called the Speyside Whiskey Walk, which is a hike where there's whiskey outside of all these distilleries, and you learn about the history of the distilleries. And it was really on that hike that I became fascinated with the craftsmanship of whiskey. Not the travel, like we didn't want to do a travel log like that would be on the Travel Channel. We wanted to, because there are films like that about whiskey and they're great, but we wanted to kind of explore the craftsmanship, the heritage, the traditions, the techniques that the people, and mostly the people that make it.
You capture some of it here in the trailer, but when you watch this film, it not only is a part of the community in some of these islands. Islay is one of the islands where a lot of this distilleries come from. It is the community. The distillery was built and the village built up around it. And I mean, we're talking, hundreds of years ago, these places were started. And it is so much of the heritage of the Scottish people. So you took the whiskey walk. I've actually been to the Scottish, the whiskey museum in Edinburgh. You actually get in these little distillery pots and they take you on this little ride through and they hand you little bits of scotch by the Edinburgh Castle there. So that was then. What was the process to say, okay, let's now get the funding together. Let's go over there and film with these people. And folks, just so you know, the folks on the screen here are the biggest names and faces of that industry. So an incredible roster of talent you got to be included in this.
Yeah, we were very fortunate. I think we approached them the right way. They saw that we wanted to do something different than they had done before, and I think we've kept our promise in that regard. We honestly, every single person we approached is in the film except one, and he was not, because he was in India for 3 months while we were shooting, so it just didn't work. But yeah, we did a crowdfund to start fundraising for it, and then after we put together sort of a teaser reel based on that, then we went out and raised the rest of the money, and then shot this. I can never keep track of this. I think we shot it in 3 continents, 5 countries, 9 weeks, because we had to go to Australia, because we had to follow our main guy, Jim McEwen. He's a partner in a distillery in Australia, so we had to go there as well. But most of it was shot in Scotland.
Wow. 3. That's amazing. Anytime, folks, if you've worked in production and you want to shoot internationally, there's a whole other bag of worms there that you're opening up. So well done. It's just a seamless film. It is. It's as gentle as these beautiful images you're showing, but it's incredibly interesting. I'm a big fan of British television. I'm watching Shetland again for the 3rd time right now. A big reason just to see these great vistas you've got here. It's actually similar in some respects to the Midwest and parts of America, but it is it's a seamless film, and it starts gently and pulls you in. Now, this guy Jim McEwen, his story is so interesting, and I don't think we're spoiling anything for the movie to say that he made a personal choice in the middle of his career to leave a brand and start up with reviving a different brand. Did you know that part of the story was happening when you reached out, or was that just some documentary magic?
No, we knew, but what we didn't know is just how dramatic it was. I think our original approach to the film, especially I think with documentaries, you sort of have to kind of go with where the story takes you a little bit. Mm-hmm. And we originally sort of had envisioned a bit more of an even-handed story of all different, the amount of screen time, for example, that they were all going to get. But then their story became so dramatic, in a cinematic way, and just the heightened stakes of it all were there, and so it really kind of took front and center in the movie on its own. It demanded the attention.
And folks, watch the movie. We're going to tell you in a second how you can literally see it tonight. But those little moments in this, when you realize that, for instance, this gentleman on the screen right here had a lot of skin in the game. He talks about, this deal that he was putting, big money, a lot of his family money on the line for. He was putting a lot on the line to back this smaller label. And again, it's all about rebuilding. There's a quote right there: the hotels had people in them, the shops started opening up. It is so much weaving the fabric of Scottish life, Scottish island life into this industry of whiskey, and it's just got such a rich heritage to it, and I just think you captured that so well in the film, Greg. So well done. Now let's talk about how folks can see it, because you folks are releasing it. We've had on Oscar winner Brian Fogel with his new documentary, Oscar nominee Sam Pollard with his new documentary, now your documentary. And what's similar about the three of you is the release form is obviously a little different right now. You may have had a traditional theatrical in the past. You're releasing this, I think, in a really fascinating way. Why don't you tell people how you're releasing it and how they can see it?
We'd love to. So our plan was a more traditional one, and we had started getting into film festivals and whiskey festivals. We were going to screen it at whiskey festivals. And one by one, every film and whiskey festival in the world got canceled last year. We had targeted the film to be ready to go in May. There's a big whiskey festival on Isla, and we were going to premiere, in a whiskey warehouse on Isla. We had all sorts of exciting plans, and they just evaporated on us. So at first we did what everyone has done, and we waited, and we thought, well, the world will sort itself out. The world will start turning again. And it just, we got tired of waiting, to be honest. And I always tell people that, people have been watching more things streamed than ever before, and people have been drinking more whiskey than ever before. And we're lucky enough to have filled a house at that crossroads. So what we've done is we're streaming it through our website. We've done a 6-day Burns Night festival built around Robert Burns Night, which was 2 days ago. But today's the last day of it. And each night I say night because night in Scotland, but in Iowa it would be at 3 p.m. every day at 3 p.m. We have a live Q&A with these people who are in the film, different ones every night. But people can also watch those Q&As not live, but that's when they're live because they do have lives and have to sleep. So, but what we're going to do is, even though today's the last day of the Burns, we are then going to take a couple days off, and then we're starting to do whiskey club events where we're encouraging people all over the world to team up with their whiskey clubs, and then we're streaming it to them and then doing live Q&As with them. We've got a number of those set up already, and and we're selling tickets to those, but we're not like charging clubs for those or anything. So we're just reaching out to clubs saying, hey, if you guys need a fun event to do, we'll set it up. And what we've done is we've sold out of these right now, but we're going to make more. These are like whiskey tasting kits that pair with the movie. And each of them are little test tubes of different whiskeys that are in the movie. And we have little colored dots that pop up in the corner that correspond with the different colored tubes. So there's, 6 different whiskeys throughout the film. And so, we're doing that with clubs as well. We have a tasting mat that kind of goes with those too, that explains each whiskey.
Oh, I just love it. And folks, there's the web address, wateroflifefilm.com. Robert Burns Festival, obviously he was the Scottish national poet. I've been to Robert Burns Night. They carry out the haggis. Someone recites the ode to the haggis. I just love it. I lived in Edinburgh. I was an actor there. I was a bartender there. It's just been such a personal treat for me to watch your film, Greg. And I've got to thank Richard Schiff, the actor, for putting you and I together. I met you in his living room. Yeah. 9 years ago, Greg, when was it?
I think so, yeah. I think it was because my wife was pregnant. Yeah, so it was like 9 years ago because my son's almost 10 now, so.
I just, and that's, so many of the guests, I just have to thank Richard for Ian Kelly is creating Julian Fellowes' next film. I met Ian in Richard's living room. Anyway, so I have to give a shout out to Richard Schiff. But Greg, I've always felt a bit of a Vulcan mind meld with you. And when I heard about this project coming out, I said, wait a second. I not only lived in Scotland, you made a documentary about Scottish whiskey. And it's a fantastic project, Greg. So nice job, buddy.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Folks, we're going to be right back with Lisa Marks. She's going to tell us her personal story of spending some time with Larry King, as well as her streaming picks this week, right after the White House was kind enough to provide us about a 1.5-minute video here of what it means to start their administration. Let's take a look.
Every morning, millions of Americans are joined together by a simple act. They get up and they go to work. They do it without fanfare, without complaint, when times are easy and when times are hard. And right now, times are indeed hard. Because this morning, there were also millions of Americans who didn't go to work. We're hurting, we are mourning, and we are struggling. At times, it can feel like we've never been more separate from one another, in more ways than one. But we can change that. And we will. Because we can choose to see that we've been connected all along. Connected by a love for this country. By a continual drive to improve upon it. Connected by the shared dignity, the quiet respect of an honest day's work. Yes, this morning, millions of Americans woke up and they went to work. And we did too.
Folks, there is Lisa Marks all the way from Leigh-on-Sea, right outside of London. Lisa, how are you today?
I'm good. It's lovely to see you. That week's gone quickly, I think.
It's we just had on New York State there with Greg, and now the United Kingdom, all coming at you from the middle of America, West Des Moines here. It's just it still fascinates me. Now I want to show this cover photo real quick here, Lisa. That's going to come up with Greg's documentary. Again, we'll give him a quick another plug here. So that right there is Lisa's story that was in The Guardian about Larry King loves bagels so much he bought his own company, which I think is just a great way to start this conversation. So why don't you tell us about the time you got to spend with Mr. King?
It was so great. The thing is, it's quite intimidating as a journalist to meet a journalist as great as Larry King. So I remember being a little bit wary, but a little bit anxious beforehand, and thinking, I've got to be on my best game here. He's going to be judging me, and I've got to be really good. And he was just ultimately just such a nice guy to spend the afternoon with, and very welcoming. He probably realized that maybe, anyone coming to interview Larry King would be intimidated, so you sort of really, you have to be on top of your game there. But he was so wonderful. And I was just having a look at the chapter I'd written in the book about it, because he, we shared bagels, we shared stories. And one of the things that he told me, because I asked him what drove him, because obviously he had a very long career, very illustrious career, really was working really right up until the end. And he said to me, and I won't forget this, he said, I'm curious about everything. Diversity is my middle name. He said, I'm just as interested in the waitress as the president. And that's what gave me the opportunity. And I think that just says about him, and that his curiosity really drove his career. You could see that in the work that he did. So I'll never forget him saying that. And he also said, he said, you don't want to sit next to me on an airplane because I'll want to know everything about you. He said, I'm the most irritating person to be on a flight with. I will not give you a moment's peace. So he was great. And the bagels were really lovely as well. And, he told me that, he came from a certain amount of poverty, and his spectacles, his reading glasses were provided by New York State. And, he never felt as if he had enough money in the neighborhood where he lived. And it was always a little bit of a struggle. And, for him to have his own bagel bakery in Beverly Hills. He was like a kid in a toy shop. He just was, you could see how much he loved it. And he had a table in the corner of the diner that had a microphone attached to the top of to the counter there, and that would be his table. So he'd sit and eat these bagels with his friends. He'd always have his friends around with this, silver microphone sat in the middle of the table. It was great. So it was a real honor to spend a few hours with him. I'm really pleased. I was very sad to hear of his passing, obviously.
Oh, it's incredibly sad. He obviously a fixture in Beverly Hills, not only in media, but in Beverly Hills. So my office was a block and a half up from there, right at Little Santa Monica. And the person who had the office directly above mine was Stan Lee, the comic book legend. So I would hear him on his phone above mine, walk to lunch and pass Larry King going to his bagel shop. That would, at least once a week that would happen. And Larry King, I chatted with him at a party once, but he would always, you just see him walk down the street. Oh, hi, Larry. Oh, hi, how are you? Loved who he was in life. You know, there's people like him. There's people, David Hasselhoff loves who he is in life. He goes, Brent, I know who I am. I've been riding the Hoff train for 30 years. People who, worked really hard to get where they are. And, what you just talked about, it in my very small way, that is what this program tries to do is everyone has a story. Everyone is most often trying to do the best they can. And that's what I'm trying to focus on here, that, we are all in a real sense in this together, this little thing called life. And, I've always called myself a life junkie, and that I want to know everything. And I want to go through life with, a child's level of curiosity. So that story of Larry King, thank you for that. And that was part of it was in The Guardian, and then your book, which is up on the shelf. Ryan is ready for you now. At least as many travails in Hollywood is one of the chapters there. So definitely check that out. But so let's talk about streaming picks this week. Again, thank you for coming on the program and helping me and the viewers find out what someone with your discerning eye is liking this week. So what do you got for us?
Well, I think this week I went for a lot of colour. I was like, I just want fun and sparkles. And actually leading on from Larry King talking about his passion. And that's a nice segue into the film Soul, the Pixar film Soul, which is on Disney Plus at the moment, which has Pixar's first African-American lead, voiced by Jamie Foxx, who is such a great actor and a really great guy as well. And Tina Fey also has another lead role as this little spark of a spirit called 22. And it's written and directed by Kemp Powers, who we talked about last week, who wrote One Night in Miami, the stage play and the screenplay, which is still on Prime. And it's an interesting film. It's I don't know if you've ever seen the film A Matter of Life and Death, which is a man dies, but he sort of gets caught somewhere along the line. They miss him, and he still thinks he's alive, but he's really dead. And he's got to argue the case about why he should be allowed to go back down to Earth. There's some shades of that, but also some bonkers sort of Disney Fantasia artistry. I mean, it is quite. It's compelling to watch. The animation is amazing, and the story is of this guy he's a jazz pianist. He's got this passion, but he works as a teacher, and on the day he gets his big break to work with this famous jazz saxophonist, he ends up dying, although he doesn't quite. He sort of finds himself in between sort of the afterlife and Earth, and he's obviously on this journey to get back down to Earth so that he can fulfill his life's passion, which is to play jazz. And along the way, he's assigned this sort of little, I keep going little creature because I'm not quite sure how to describe them, but wonderful little Disney animations, little sort of line drawings of things. I'm not even quite sure what we'd call them, but these entities, these beings. And this little number 22, who's voiced by Tina Fey, just has lost their spark. So the pair of them end back down on Earth on this journey to try and find, really, what we're all trying to do, as you've just said, fulfill our passions, make every day count. And especially more than ever, I just think what a wonderful time for this film to be released, especially with what we're going through on a day-to-day basis at the moment, is finding a way to make our lives worthwhile, to fill our lives with joy, to be as good as we can be, and to fulfill our potential. And it's all of that the script is a little bit knotty, I have to say. In the middle there, there's it's a little bit, I'm like, what are we doing over here now? But it's all very entertaining, and there's wonderful, wonderful scenes in the barbershop on Earth, which Kent Powers actually talks about. Pixar, if you're on Disney Plus, there's a series of people talking about their work behind the scenes for Disney, and he's one of the people that talks about this movie and how he came up with the barbershop scene for Soul. So really, really interesting. Great music. John Baptiste from The Late Show is behind a lot of it. Trent Reznor as well, and it looks beautiful. The animation is marvelous. It's so compelling to watch. It's like a big explosion in a candy store. Really, it's fantastic. Yeah.
It's an incredibly unique film. You find out 5 minutes into it that this is not going to be the movie that you thought it was going to be. The beginning of it reminded me of Mr. Holland's Opus, the Richard Dreyfuss film, where he's a school teacher and he dreams of being, and so I'm like, oh, we're going to watch that movie. That's really interesting. And like Lisa said, sadly, he passes away at the beginning. And you think Pixar film, I wasn't expecting a death at the beginning, but then you look at a movie like Up, which the whole movie is about his wife passing away. And you don't think about those themes necessarily for children's entertainment. This is not necessarily children's entertainment. I don't mean to scare parents with that, but I think if you are going to show this to your kids, you should probably be there with them because they might have some questions for you. Lisa just mentioned the different characters and how do you describe them? They're Picasso imaginings of what a soul would look like. Obviously, you're going to have conversations with your kids about afterlife. What does it mean to be alive? Is there a soul? What is your body? These are the questions that might come up if you watch this with little ones. But to sit down and to get a script like this, okay, now you're talking to, well, I don't know what it would be. I guess the manager of afterlife area, and then what that would be, and then what new souls that haven't been placed into people yet look like. For that part of it alone, it probably will get nominated for originality because you've got to, when you've got nothing but literally a blank page or a blank screen in front of you, how do you imagine what these things would look like? And they did an incredibly compelling job of that. So yeah, you get much more than I was bargaining for with a movie like Soul. And again, I give huge kudos to the filmmakers for, again, originality. It just took a direction I wasn't expecting, and to see that level of, there was a movie
I just mentioned a guy called Pete Docter also. Oh, sorry, there was a little glitch on the line there. I just was saying that a guy called Pete Docter also wrote and directed it as well. So it wasn't just Kemp. We must give credit where credit's due to the writers. But you are right. I did sit down and was expecting one thing, and it very quickly goes in another direction. And that was it takes you on a journey. It really does. And also some really funny moments on the way, some of those heartwarming moments, comedy.
Absolutely. I was at A24 is a company, and they made a bunch of huge movies, and I was at one of their parties, and Spike Jonze and I struck up a conversation, and he had just made a movie called Her with Joaquin Phoenix, and his imagining of what the future would bring and how we could have an actual relationship with technology and AI and our phone. I said, to map that out like he did and have it be presented as such simple reality. We had a great conversation about that. I haven't really felt that until this movie, which is you are going in uncharted territory. It's one thing, you've seen movies about the afterlife, the Warren Beatty film where he's up there, and the Albert Brooks movie where they, what the heck?
Wait, was it Heaven's Gate? Heaven Can
Wait. And then, yeah. And so you've seen these movies before, but they're just, people, and they film it and da-da-da. But to go into the animated space, check out Soul for so many reasons. But for mine, the biggest reason is find out what someone with a good sized budget could imagine parts of the afterlife or other dimensions could look like. Really fascinating.
It was amazing, and they kept it very simple with the in-between world, I thought, as well. There wasn't anything too complicated there, especially with the line drawings. Really, it's compelling. I actually watched it twice. I thought I need to sit down and watch this again. It was as good the second time, and I noticed more as well. Some of the background illustrations and animations are just incredible. So watch it twice, everybody. Don't.
I love it. That'll be the quote that they'll pull. Lisa Marks, watch it twice. All right, what's your second pick this week, Lisa?
This is a bit bonkers. I think I've had just a kind of crazy week where I just wanted to be immersed in glitter and sparkles and color and crazy animation. But I actually ended up watching The Prom on Netflix, which came out over the holiday season. I thought I'd just slip this in under the wire just while we're still in January, and then we'll sort of leave, all of that stuff behind. But it's an adaptation of a Broadway musical, and this is directed and produced by Ryan Murphy, he of Glee and American Horror Story and many, many other wonderful series. And it tells the story of a young girl who is a lesbian who wants to take her girlfriend to the prom at a high school in Indiana. And the very conservative head of the PTA, who's played by Kerry Washington, banned her from going to the prom. Meanwhile, back in New York, you have this group of Broadway actors who have just performed their opening night of a stinker of a play or musical about Eleanor Roosevelt, and have had terrible, terrible reviews. And they're all horribly narcissistic, ego-driven characters, played by Meryl Streep and James Corden. Nicole Kidman's in there, and so is Andrew Rannells. And they decide to pick up the cause of this young girl who's called Emma and go to Indiana and save the day to make themselves look good. They're not doing it for Emma. They're doing it completely for themselves. They're all self-serving, obviously, until they get to the town and they get involved with the locals. And honestly, it's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever watched, Brent. It's bonkers, and it's fun, and it's a musical. So if you don't like people suddenly bursting into song, as they're just about to explain their life story, then it's definitely not for you. But it's very, very silly. Meryl Streep is wonderful. She can really do anything. Oh, and Keegan-Michael Key plays a really great role as well as a sort of Meryl Streep's love interest. It's, as I said, completely ridiculous, very lively, beautifully shot. The songs are great. It was possibly about 20 minutes too long, but maybe that was just me because I was hungry or something. But it was just great fun. And I think, after all the seriousness, we've gone through a lot of sort of serious films recently, Brent. So I felt like people need to go on Netflix and have a look at this and just put that little Broadway hat on and tip a hat and do a little chorus line around the living room and enjoy this one, because it really is sweet. And it's a journey. It's another journey, but it's a really fun, colorful journey. So that's
it's interesting. Yeah, you picked an animated film and a musical. Artists use all the tools they can to enlighten or inspire or get people to pay their hard-earned money for the ticket. Musicals, obviously, is something that I've been going to for a long time. My training was in live theater, actually. And to see that translated to Netflix, a lot of times it can feel like, okay, this is just a musical clunkily put on film. But this one has been getting rave reviews. I've not been able to see it yet. I try as best I can. I will have watched it by next week, and we could pick it up, and I'll give you my 2 cents on it. But I will say that the premise sounds great. It sounds really interesting. And Keegan-Michael Key, I've got to get a shout out to Gary Kroger, was our guest yesterday. Right. Keegan-Michael Key did an interview with Entertainment Weekly yesterday where he talked a good chunk of it about Gary Kroger, about this. In the 80s, he saw this SNL skit that he thought was really funny, and Gary's like, I can't believe that of all people. So that happened yesterday. So I want to get a shout out to Gary Kroger, who's on the program yesterday. So Lisa, well, thank you for that. Those are 2 excellent recommendations. And, folks, what this talks about in a larger way, I think, is that it's okay right now to use the tools at your disposal to put a smile on, to put a happy on, reach out to someone who, either needs your help or can help you to get through this, because we're all experiencing something a little different right now. So use the tools. Netflix and a musical, there's nothing at all wrong with that in the world. So thanks for pointing that out, Lisa. And are we going to see you again next week, Lisa? I hope so.
I hope so. I'm just going to sit here a week until you turn that camera not moving.
I love it. All right, folks. Well, that is our program for today. And again, you know, the thanks come from me. I couldn't be more grateful to have this opportunity to speak with everyone. Wednesday, January 27th is today. Tomorrow's show, we've got a big program on Admiral Mike Franken. Just ran for Senate. He actually personally knows some of the people in the new Biden cabinet. So we're going to be chatting with him about his, you know, not only his 40-year career in Washington and out on Navy vessels, but also about his interaction with these folks who are just, you know, nominated to some of the biggest jobs in this country. So that tomorrow, a whole bunch more. But thank you, Lisa, for being on the program. And thank you, viewer, for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.